In the last video, we used the Dresden template ruler in combination with some string and crumb squares to make some very interesting looking Dresden blocks. In this video, we're going to continue that trend of using specialty rulers, and we're going to use the 60-degree triangle ruler here to create an interesting block. Let's get this video started. So the ruler that I'm using to create the block for this video is the 60-degree triangle ruler. Now, there's a lot of different versions of this ruler out there. Every brand has their own version to this ruler, and it all has different markings and different measurements. This ruler is actually from So Yeah Quilting. When I was in their shop one day, got talked into buying this ruler. While this video is not a full-on tutorial about how to use a 60-degree triangle, there's a ton of videos out there on YouTube that you can watch on how to create various shapes and various quilt blocks using this ruler. Now, to be honest, I just recently purchased this ruler, so I haven't experimented a lot, but what I have experimented with and what I have created, I do like. So this is one of those rulers where you might want to actually pick up one of these rulers. A version of it doesn't necessarily have to be the So Yeah Quilting one, but I do like this one. And I want to talk about some key things about this particular ruler, or the So Yeah version of this ruler, that you might want to look for when you go shopping for your ruler. One of the things that So Yeah is so proud of is on the back of this ruler, there is a certain coating that will grip your fabrics really well. I mean, look at this. I can actually spin this around and see how it grips the fabric. It doesn't slide around so much. So their version, or their rulers, have this coating on the back where it does grip the fabric. So you don't have to worry about ruler slipping while you're cutting out your shapes so much. The other thing that I like about this ruler, now most 60-degree triangle rulers, they will have this center line going right down the center here. But the So Yeah version actually has two separate lines that are a 1/4 inch away from that center line. Now, it's helpful because alongside just cutting out a triangular shape, you can actually make half rectangle triangles, and that's where these two 1/4 inch lines that are away from the center, that's where those lines actually come in handy. Third thing, and this is not really, I mean, it's a convenient thing, but it's not something I would, it wouldn't be a deal breaker if I didn't have this on my ruler, is the top here. Notice that on the bottom two points here, they're full-on points, but the top has been trimmed off. This is so that you can take your rotary cutter and just snip off the tip of the triangle, and that way you can kind of cut off your dog ears. It's a nice feature to have. Is it essential? No. Now, with this So Yeah version, you can go up to an 8.5 inch triangle. In some versions, I've seen it go all the way up to 12. Don't know what you're going to be doing with a block that big, but hey, if you like big blocks, well then, more power to you. Now again, this is not a full-on tutorial on how to use the 60-degree triangle ruler, but rather what I want you to walk away with by watching this video is just get the idea. I know a lot of you have these templates, these specialty rulers that are just sitting in your stash. Well, in terms of using scraps, strips, crumb blocks, and your string blocks, take a look at some of these rulers, because if you use your string block or your crumb blocks and use these rulers on them, you can come up with some very interesting looking blocks. Case in point, this is the block that I'll be making on this video, in which I gotta say, it looks very interesting to me. I didn't actually make a string version of this block because I was so in love with just this that I didn't even want to look at what the strings would do, but I would probably experiment with the string blocks and try and make some other units. Perhaps a half rectangle triangle, or perhaps maybe just an octagon shape. Who knows? But again, this won't be a full tutorial on how to use the 60-degree triangle ruler, but rather just think of the idea that you can use some of these specialty rulers on your strings or your crumb blocks or your scraps and come up with something interesting. To make the 6-pointed star, I first cut out the triangle pieces from my crumb squares. I cut my triangles using the 3.5-inch line on my ruler. You can cut your triangles bigger or smaller depending on the size block that you want. Now, I was aiming for a 12-inch finished block, but my math was a little bit off and I ended up putting a border around the block to make it 12 inches finish. Now, I kept the cutaway pieces for future projects. You don't have to save them if you don't want to. Altogether, I cut 12 triangle pieces from my crumb squares. For the background, I'm using a plain white fabric. Now I'm cutting the same size triangle that I cut from the crumb fabric, which was 3.5 inches. Now whatever size you choose, make sure that you cut your background triangles to the same size that you cut the print or the crumb fabric from. You'll need a total of 12 background triangles, and again, you can choose to save the cut-off pieces or not. Take 2 of the crumb or print triangles and sew them right sides together. Now whether you choose to sew on the left, on the right, or on the bottom edge of the triangle, it does not matter since all the sides are equal. However, if you choose to use a directional print, be aware of the orientation and placement of the triangles. Since I was using crumb squares, it didn't matter to me what edge I sewed on. Now I choose to press my seams open because of the bulk from the crumbs sewn together. First, I finger press my seams open, then I later hit it with an iron. Now you can choose to press your seams open or press to one side. That choice is yours. Also, because some of my crumb pieces that I sewed together were so small, they ended up getting caught totally in the seam allowance, which created unnecessary excess bulk. So I did use my snips to trim some of that out. I also gave it a shot of steam when ironing and used my tailor's clapper to get the seam allowances as flat as I could. You'll end up with this diamond shape. Now, you must choose which triangle or which half of the diamond shape will be the outer star point and which triangle or which half of the diamond shape will become the center of the star. The triangle or half of the diamond that you choose to become the star points or the outer edge of the star, you're going to sew 2 of the background triangles on the left and right edge. The final unit that you should end up with is a larger triangle shape with the diamond in the center and 2 background triangles on the left and right points. You will need to make 6 of these units. Once you have all 6 of your units together, you can lay out your star block and start putting the block together. At this point, the block will be a hexagon shape. Start sewing the triangle units together first into 2 pairs, then add on a 3rd triangle unit to each pair. It'll be much easier to sew 3 triangle units together, which will make half the hexagon, then sew the 2 halves together. Now you'll need 4 half rectangle triangles to sew on the 4 sides of the hexagon and turn it into a square shape. Remember that optional line that is 1/4 inch away from the center? Yeah, this is where it actually comes in handy. You can use that line to cut half rectangle shapes, but if your ruler doesn't have that marking, well, just cut another triangle and cut it in half. Well, come to think of it, it might actually be a better option to cut a triangle and then cut it in half. In any case, the size triangle or half rectangles, whichever your option you're doing, it should be about double the size of the original cut triangles that made up the hexagon shape. So if you originally cut 3.5-inch triangles to make the star or that hexagon shape, well, you should be cutting 7-inch triangles or rectangles to turn the hexagons into the square shape. This should give you more than enough room to trim down and square up the block. There's an issue that I wanted to kind of make light of, and it's a growing concern not just within the quilting industry and community, but within the larger crafting community as a whole. It's about fraudulent products that are knockoffs or copies sold as cheaper alternatives to the original product. Now, specifically with quilting, I knew that there was a problem with people copying quilting patterns. There were even times where even my own quilting friends, they would ask to borrow a pattern that I had just so that they could actually make some Xerox copies of it. And they even offered to pay me a fee to borrow those patterns. Now, I said no to that because, well, this was something ethical, and I didn't feel comfortable renting out a pattern that someone else developed. I know that this is an issue among pattern writers and that they are losing business because of that. This is the primary reason that I personally don't develop and sell quilt patterns of my own, since I know that there is a good chance that someone will make a fraudulent copy and sell it as if they were the ones that developed it. Now, some of you might already know about this problem with quilting patterns, but did you know that some of our quilting tools are also the targets of these fraudsters? Case in point, this tool here is called the Shark Applicutter. It was developed by Rob Appel when he was collaborating with Missouri Star Quilt Company on the Mansewing YouTube channel. It's a rotary cutter that is designed to cut out applique shapes. More specifically, if you got those shapes with really tight curves, this tiny rotary cutter actually helps you with that. I have seen some quilting businesses create their own copies of this tool with a very, very similar design, even down to using the same color scheme and a very similar packaging. The only thing that was missing from the copycat was the engraving on the tool. Now, there's even fraudulent quilting rulers. And this was actually brought to my attention from another YouTube creator by the name of Carolina Moore. Now, if you don't know who she is, she runs her own quilting business, creating tools and patterns from which she sells on her website. She also has a YouTube channel called Carolina Moore. She created a video talking about fraudulent quilting rulers. Now, I'm not a legal expert, but I would think that creating a copy of someone else's patented product would be illegal. But as Carolina explains in her video, the process of stopping these fraudsters, it's very difficult. And the moment you stop one, 10 more show up. I think the analogy she used was, it's like playing whack-a-mole. The moment you get one, someone or somewhere else, there's another one that pops up. So what are we to do to stop the fraud? Well, in her video, Carolina gives tips on identifying the real quilting rulers as opposed to the fraudulent quilting ones. And let me tell you, some of the example fraud rulers that she shows in that video, they even had me fooled. Now, in order to stop the fraud, well, we all need to be educated as to how they're creating the fraud in the first place. So here's what I want all of you to do. I want to ask everyone to go and watch that video that Carolina created so that you can be informed on how to identify the fraudulent ruler and not get scammed. I'll leave a link to the video in the description box below. Or you can search on YouTube for Carolina Moore Fake Quilting Rulers. The more we know, the better we can identify these scammers and fraudsters and put a stop to them. That is it for this video. Now, while this was not a full tutorial on how to use the 60-degree triangle ruler, I hope it gave you some ideas about how to take a specialty ruler or your specialty templates. You know you have them in your quilt room. You might as well take them out and, well, use them on your string blocks or use them on your crumbs and use all that scrap fabric that you got stashed away. Take one of these rulers and see what you come up with, because you might come up with something interesting. Now, if you would like to have a full-on tutorial about how to use a 60-degree triangle ruler, again, I just recently got mine, so I'm still kind of experimenting with it. But if you want to see all the blocks that I've created using this, drop a comment down below. Let me know if you want to see a full tutorial about what you can do with these 60-degree triangle rulers. And while you're at it, well, click the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications on when I upload the next video. And if you want more inspiration, well, check out the Treasure Heart Creations Facebook group. Link is in the description box below. We hope to see you there. Well, that's it for now, and until next time, let's all get out there and let's all create something.